Golden Sun! Yeah, Golden Sun, one of the most important JRPG franchises from Nintendo. So today we're about to find out what the hell happened to it. How come one of the most important franchises from that company faded into obscurity, despite all the success it had back at the beginning of this century? So what the hell? What happened? It's been 8 years since the last Golden Sun. 8 years and we know nothing about it. So is it over? Will it come back? Today, we're about to find out what the hell happened to Golden Sun. And guess what? I have good news for you. You ready? Are you ready? No, only in Japan bullshit! Yeah, that's a good start, right? So let's begin. Nintendo. The world's most famous company in the video game industry. The one also responsible for publishing the Golden Sun franchise. Our story begins at the early 90s when a designer from Enix decided to leave the company to form his own, called Sega City 4, obviously a division of Sega. So along with his brother, Hiroyuki Takahashi then changed the name of his own company to Sonic Software Planning in order to develop the game Shining in the Darkness for the Genesis in 1991. They would later then produce the next year the popular all-time classic Shining Force for the same console. Since that game had been a success, the team planned a sequel as well. Many other games of this historical franchise were released throughout the 90s, but that's a story for another time. The thing is that Nintendo noticed this franchise and therefore this development team. In 1995, the Takahashi brothers, now popular for the Shining Force franchise, changed the name again of their own company to Camelot Software Planning. It was around that time when Nintendo approached them to offer a much better deal than Sega. So in 1998, the team abandoned Sega and officially joined Nintendo. You know, it's interesting to know that Nintendo wanted them on their side after Camelot had developed Beyond the Beyond for the PlayStation, meaning they also worked for Sony for a time, and considering that game was a huge failure. Nevertheless, Nintendo wanted them to make Mario games. No surprise, right? But not just your platforming adventure Mario games, no. Nintendo wanted the team to develop Mario Golf and Mario Tennis, which will be released in 1999 and 2000 respectively. The brothers worked more specifically in the Game Boy Color version of Mario Golf, which included some RPG elements on it. This proved Nintendo that Camelot had enough potential to create a popular RPG franchise of their own, to be able to compete with Sony and its gigantic library of excellent RPGs. The result was Golden Sun. It was released for the Game Boy Advance in August 1, 2001, 3 months later in North America and the next year in Europe. It was a huge success. The game retained elements from classic turn-based JRPGs from the 90s, a charming story about friendship, and a plot that was not too adult-oriented nor child-oriented either, so it was the perfect RPG for everybody. The game consisted on a pair of childhood friends living in a peaceful village that soon are forced to start an adventure thanks to an ominous disaster. It involved strong topics of magic, alchemy, friendship, and monster collecting. The original idea was to make a really long game in which you could choose between playing as the good guys or the bad guys. This was planned to be released on the Nintendo 64, but since that console's lifespan was nearing its end and the GameCube was almost already out, Nintendo wouldn't take any risks and told them to publish it instead for the Game Boy Advance. The problem, however, was that the game wouldn't fit in one cartridge, so they decided to split the game into 2 parts. Golden Sun, playing as the protagonists, and The Lost Age, playing with the antagonists. This one came out in 2002, but North America and Europe wouldn't get it until almost 1 year later, in 2003. Just like its predecessor, The Lost Age was also a huge success. It had almost the exact same gameplay and story, for reasons already explained, but now focusing on Felix instead of Isaac, who had been the main character in the first game. In my personal opinion, I like The Lost Age more than the original, simply because I always felt the original to be a little slow at the beginning. Surprisingly though, The Lost Age, even with its huge success, did not meet the sales expectations Nintendo had from the first one. Golden Sun had sold over 1 million units in Japan and the US. The Lost Age, however, only sold 680,000 when it came out. Now, you might think this is not that relevant, and it usually isn't when it comes to other companies like Sony and Sega, but when it comes to Nintendo, oh boy, it's a pretty different thing. If a game does not meet their expectations, it's over. There's no point in continuing on with it. So apparently, that was it. No more Golden Sun. Years went by, and Camelot started developing more Mario Golf games and more Mario Tennis, all for the Game Boy Advance. Miraculously, though, they were finally allowed to work on a third installment in the series. So in 2009, they announced the game on E3, and the following year, the world met Golden Sun Dark Dawn for the Nintendo DS. The long-awaited third part in the series was very well received at first, even though the story now took place 30 years after the events of the first two games, playing now as the original protagonists' descendants. The transition to 3D was a major attraction of the game. However, time went on and the complaints began. The game was too easy, the features were outdated, the story was full of fillers, blah blah blah. Critics and gamers were eventually disappointed. This was not what they had been expecting since 2003 and The Lost Age's success. To make matters worse, sales were nowhere near as good as they had been on the previous installments. So for Nintendo, that was the last straw. In 2010, Shugo Takahashi himself, in an interview, said that he was burned out after the release of The Lost Age, claiming that the development time required to make both Golden Sun games was very long, longer than what it usually should be for a Nintendo handheld system. Camelot needed to cool off and work on other simple stuff for a while before finally working on the real event yet to come, literally saying that the first two games had only been the prologues. So imagine how they felt after the failure of Dark Dawn, their alleged masterpiece. In 2012, Hiroyuki Takahashi said the following in an interview. "A big reason for us making RPGs comes from the requests from all the people who have enjoyed our RPGs in the past. Perhaps if there are enough Nintendo users asking for another game in the Golden Sun series, then this will naturally lead to the development of such a game." It's 2018 and nope, nothing in sight, no new Golden Sun. Will it come back one day? If we're talking about Nintendo here, it's really hard to believe. In conclusion, Dark Dawn and its low sales were pretty much responsible for the franchise's demise. If we also consider the long time it took the team to release it, the monetary politics of Nintendo, in other words capitalism, and apparently, according to Takahashi, the lack of response from fans, also contributed to the series' death. Golden Sun will always be remembered as one of the best RPG franchises from Nintendo, one of the most beloved by fans and praised by critics. It left us with an amazing duology that is currently considered as an all-time classic, and a third game that wasn't really that bad in my opinion. But Nintendo has Mario, has Zelda, Fire Emblem, many franchises that are extremely successful and literally multi-millionaire. For an RPG series to be up to those standards, it will have to be as extremely successful as them. Not the case with Isaac and his friends. We may never see a new Golden Sun one day, but we will never forget one of the best JRPG trilogies of all time. That's it, guys. That's it. I don't want to be pessimistic or negative, but if we're talking about Nintendo here, we're probably never going to see a new Golden Sun. Such a shame. But anyways, who knows, right? If they did miraculously come back for Golden Sun 3, even though it was a failure, I don't know. Maybe someday we'll get a new Golden Sun, a good one, a decent one, that can live up to the names of the first two Golden Suns for the Game Boy Advance. So that's it for this episode of my What the Hell video series. Thanks for watching, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends. See you next time!